Hello there, this is actually a little bit different to what I normally do on my channel. Now, I was going to use the toilet earlier today and my foot went right through the floorboard. As you can see, it's actually been quite a clean break, and it turns out that water had got into a crack in the floorboard and actually eaten away, not rotted, but actually sort of eaten away into the crack, causing the problem here is you've got a joist running underneath where it actually cracked. So the first thing I wanted to do was to actually get this repaired. So check in the surrounding area underneath the toilet itself and also on the rest of the joists for rot. I found that thankfully we were rot free. So what I was able to do was to sort of commence the repair without too much sort of pain. First thing that I wanted to do was I had to get rid of part of the board itself. So using a standard sort of jigsaw, drilled a hole into the floorboard before the next joist, and just jigsawed the floorboard sort of straight down effectively. The floorboard itself, just to sort of basically get that out of the way. Now I had to remove a load of the old nails as well, so basically pull out the old nails from the floorboard itself. As just showing you a nail there. It's quite an old nail actually. I think the floorboard itself has been in since certainly the early 1900s. That part of the house was built sort of probably around sort of 1910 or so. So it's just a case of prising out the rest of that floorboard, and you're left with the joist itself. And what I wanted to do with the joist here was it's a little bit water stained, but it's not saturated, which is good. If it was saturated, the problem would be a lot bigger, and I would have entrusted that to a professional to repair. But because it was not saturated with water, and prodding it with a screwdriver it was not crumbling or rotten, I had a few materials around the house and I was actually able to perform a temporary repair myself. I say temporary because I want to replace the board that I put on there with something that is of suitable thickness to match the floorboard that I'd taken away. So what I did do is I liberally painted all of the area there with some insecticide type paint. So as you can see, I'm just liberally spreading it across that joist, the existing floorboards, and just really the whole area. And what this stuff actually does is it gets rid of any woodworm or anything else that may have actually been inside of those particular joists. Now thankfully, I had a good look at all of these joists. They are completely free of woodworm or any kind of sort of dry rot or anything of that nature. So I was actually able to sort of go ahead and actually just put the new floorboard in. Well, the floorboard I manufactured. So what I'm actually doing here, I couldn't get this particular nail out, so I'm just nailing that down and flattening it into the joist itself. If I was going to do it properly, I would have probably sort of just used a grinder and just sort of ground it off, or used something else to sort of try and pull it out. I will do that at some point, but I just wanted to get this repaired. Now what I did here was I actually made this little brace out of this bit of wood here, because obviously I've cut that floorboard a little way after it, sort of the last joist, and what I wanted to do was to sort of put a bit of strength back into it. So I cut this little sort of block, and using the drill just drilled a couple of holes into the floorboard, through into the block, then using some screws just basically screwed the block onto the floorboard. I then drilled into the joist through the block at a slight angle, about a 45-degree angle, put a couple of screws into there as well. So effectively what I've done is I've just made sort of a little bracing block so that floorboard is effectively supported by the joist as it would have been previously. Just sort of puts a little bit of extra strength back into there, and sort of means that I'm not going to have any issues where the floorboard is going to sort of break off at the next joist. So hopefully I won't sort of have any problems of that sort of nature. The property that I'm living in itself was built in 1905. I'm not sure if the area where the bathroom is was an extension that was built after. It's similar brickwork, but there are some differences which sort of make me think that it was added a little while after, so I would sort of estimate between sort of 1910 and 1920. Probably sort of more around sort of the 1910 sort of time. But all of the properties along the row have got this particular sort of identical extension out the back, so I am wondering if it was actually built at the same time as the rest of the house, which would sort of put it at 1905. Now, what I did with the block of wood that I put in was I covered that also in this insecticide as well. What I did as well was I took some measurements, and I've got this piece of, I don't know what it is, it's like MDF, but it's waterproofed MDF, so you can use it in bathrooms. I actually bought it quite a few years ago now when I was putting in the bathroom originally, and I was making up the side of the bath. So what I actually did was I had a load of it left over, and what I tend to do is I never ever seem to get rid of useful bits of wood like this that go into the utility room and just sort of get stored in there. And I'm really glad I didn't get rid of it, because on this particular occasion I've actually needed to use it. So what I did first was I measured the width of the original floorboard and then translated that measurement onto this board. Cut out the board itself, which was actually slightly longer than the hole that I had to fill in the floor there. Measured off what I needed to chop off of that particular board, and then chopped the board itself down to size, and I was able to slot that in. Because with the jigsaw, I didn't sort of do it quite straight the first time. I just had to sort of shave off a little bit the second time round, and then the board fitted absolutely perfectly and precisely the next time round when I went to refit. As you can see here, it is slightly proud on the edge where it's meeting up with the other board, but after a quick trim it slots in with no problems whatsoever. The other thing is it comes out easily, because I drilled in a couple of holes thinking I was going into the joist, but rather stupidly I was not going into the joist. I was actually quite far away from the joist itself, so once we got that sorted out we were able to screw it in properly. So I screwed it in with 2 screws into the joist. I also screwed a couple of screws into my strengthening block of wood, so that the board is well located. There is a bit of flex in the board, but that might be because it's not the correct material, and I will be replacing it once I've got the correct material with a proper piece of timber which is suitable for the purpose. As I say, this is just an emergency repair, so hopefully this will actually sort of give you an idea of what you can do in an emergency like this. And also, I think the main thing is really sort of not to panic. If it is absolutely rotten, do get a builder in. And if you do not feel confident in doing it yourself, again, seek professional advice. Hopefully this has proven useful to someone. If it has, don't forget to hit that like button, and also consider subscribing for more upcoming fascinating hobbies. Thank you very much for watching.